What happens when the very people sworn to uphold justice betray it? When a judge, cloaked in the authority of the law, steps so far out of line that it shakes the foundation of our system. Today, we're diving into a story that's rocking the nation, a story of power, betrayal, and one woman's fearless stand against corruption. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi has just dropped a bombshell in court, exposing a judge's shocking actions. And trust me, you won't believe what happens next. Welcome to The Truth, where we uncover what they don't want you to know. It's April 2025, and the United States is a powder keg. Immigration debates are raging, trust in institutions is at an all-time low, and the Trump administration is pushing forward with unrelenting force. In the middle of it all stands Pam Bondi, the fiery Attorney General, known for her fierce loyalty to President Trump and her no-holds-barred approach. She's just made headlines with a stunning accusation. A sitting judge, entrusted with the gavel, has crossed a line so egregious that the FBI had to step in. What did this judge do? Why is Bondi calling it a betrayal of everything America stands for? Let's dive in. Our story begins in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, at the Milwaukee County Courthouse. On April 18, 2025, a routine court hearing takes a dramatic turn. Eduardo Flores Ruiz, a Mexican national facing misdemeanor charges for a bar fight, is in the courtroom of Judge Hannah Dugan. But there's a twist. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, ICE, are waiting outside with a warrant to arrest Flores Ruiz for deportation. He'd been deported in 2013 and re-entered the U.S. illegally. This should have been a straightforward case. ICE does their job, the judge does hers, and justice moves forward. But that's not what happened. According to federal authorities, Judge Hannah Dugan didn't just preside over the case, she actively worked to help Flores Ruiz evade ICE. Witnesses say Dugan got visibly angry when she learned ICE was present. She called the situation absurd, stormed off the bench, and then did something unthinkable. She allegedly instructed court staff to lock the courtroom doors and escorted Flores Ruiz out through a back exit, away from the ICE agents waiting in the hall. That's right, this judge, sworn to uphold the law, is accused of sneaking a defendant out of her own courthouse to dodge federal authorities. By the time ICE realized what was happening, Flores Ruiz was gone. The agents were livid, the courtroom was in chaos, and the story was about to explode. Within hours, the FBI was involved, and Judge Dugan was facing serious questions. But this wasn't just a local incident. This was a spark that would ignite a national firestorm, and Pam Bondi was ready to fan the flames. 3 days later, on April 21, 2025, the FBI arrested Judge Hannah Dugan on charges of obstructing a federal investigation and aiding an illegal alien. The news hit like a thunderbolt. A sitting judge, arrested by the FBI. It's the kind of thing you'd expect in a Hollywood thriller, not real life. But this was real, and the details were jaw-dropping. Federal prosecutors alleged that Dugan's actions weren't a spur-of-the-moment decision but part of a pattern. They pointed to her history of lenient rulings in immigration-related cases and her public statements criticizing ICE as inhumane. They even uncovered emails where Dugan reportedly coordinated with local activists to warn defendants about ICE presence at the courthouse. Enter Pam Bondi. As Attorney General, Bondi didn't just comment on the case, she took it personally. In a fiery press conference on April 22, 2025, she stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., and let loose. This is not just about one judge, she said, her voice trembling with conviction. This is about a system that's been hijacked by activists in robes who think they're above the law. Judge Hannah Dugan didn't just break her oath, she spit on it. She betrayed the American people, and we will not stand for it. Bondi's words were like gasoline on a fire. Supporters of the Trump administration cheered her as a hero, a warrior against a corrupt judiciary. Critics, though, called her a hypocrite, pointing to her own controversial past, her ties to Trump, her dismissal of legal challenges against him, and her hardline stance on immigration. But Bondi wasn't backing down. She announced that the Justice Department was launching a full investigation into judicial misconduct across the country, vowing to root out any judge who puts personal ideology over the rule of law. Let's pause here for a second. Think about what's at stake. On one side, you've got a judge who, depending on your perspective, either made a bold stand for human rights or committed a blatant act of lawlessness. On the other, you've got Pam Bondi, a polarizing figure who's either a defender of justice or a political attack dog. And in the middle, the American people, caught in a tug-of-war over what justice even means anymore. This isn't just a legal battle, it's a cultural one, a fight for the soul of a nation. Let's dig deeper into Hannah Dugan. Who is she, and what drove her to this point? Born and raised in Milwaukee, Dugan was a rising star in the legal world. A graduate of the University of Wisconsin Law School, she spent years as a public defender before being appointed to the bench in 2019. Known for her progressive views, she was a vocal advocate for criminal justice reform and immigrant rights. To her supporters, she was a beacon of compassion, someone who saw the humanity in every defendant. To her critics, she was a bleeding heart liberal who let her politics cloud her judgment. Dugan's defenders argue that her actions on April 18 were a desperate response to an unjust system. They point out that Flores Ruiz wasn't a violent criminal, he was a father of two, working as a landscaper, caught up in a minor scuffle. They say Dugan saw ICE's presence as an overreach, a federal agency bullying a local court. She was protecting her courtroom, one activist told a local news outlet. She wasn't going to let ICE turn her into a deportation machine. But federal prosecutors see it differently. They argue that Dugan's actions weren't just reckless, they were criminal. By helping Flores Ruiz escape, she didn't just obstruct justice, she endangered public safety. They point out that Flores Ruiz had a history of DUIs and was wanted for questioning in a hit-and-run case. This wasn't about compassion, Bondi said in a follow-up statement. This was about a judge playing God, deciding who gets to follow the law and who doesn't. The courtroom showdown came on April 25, 2025, during Dugan's arraignment. The Milwaukee Federal Courthouse was packed, reporters, activists, even protesters outside chanting "Free Judge Dugan." Inside, Pam Bondi herself made a rare appearance, sitting in the front row as the Justice Department's lead prosecutor laid out the case. The room was electric as Dugan, dressed in a navy blazer, pleaded not guilty. Her lawyer argued that she was being targeted for her political beliefs, a victim of the Trump administration's vendetta against dissenters. Then came the bombshell. The prosecutor, backed by Bondi, presented new evidence, a recorded phone call between Dugan and a local immigration lawyer, allegedly discussing how to keep ICE out of the loop. The courtroom gasped as the audio played, Dugan's voice clear, "We can't let them win. We have to protect these people." The judge's face went pale, and Bondi, stone-faced, nodded to her team. It was a devastating moment, one that seemed to seal Dugan's fate. But this story isn't just about one judge or one phone call. It's about a deeper rot in the system. How did we get to a point where a judge feels justified breaking the law? Where an attorney general feels compelled to wage war on the judiciary? Let's zoom out. The immigration debate has been tearing America apart for decades, but it's reached new heights under Trump's second term. His administration's aggressive deportation policies, mass raids, expanded ICE powers, have sparked outrage among progressives. Cities like Milwaukee have declared themselves sanctuary cities, vowing to resist federal overreach. This clash of values, law and order versus compassion and resistance, has turned courtrooms into battlegrounds. Judges like Dugan see themselves as the last line of defense against a dehumanizing system. But to Bondi and her allies, these judges are part of a deep state undermining national security. We cannot allow our courts to become safe havens for lawbreakers, Bondi told a crowd at a rally in Florida days after Dugan's arrest. If you wear a robe, you don't get a free pass to break the law. Let's talk about Pam Bondi for a moment. She's no stranger to controversy. A former Florida Attorney General, Bondi rose to national prominence as a staunch Trump ally. Critics point to her 2016 decision not to join a lawsuit against Trump University, shortly after receiving a $25,000 campaign donation from Trump. They call her a political opportunist, someone who's built a career on loyalty rather than principle. But her supporters see her as a patriot, a woman who's faced relentless attacks for standing up to the establishment. Bondi's role in this case has only deepened the divide. To her base, she's a hero, exposing a corrupt judge who put illegal immigrants above American citizens. To her detractors, she's a bully, using her power to silence dissent and demonize immigrants. The truth, as always, is messier. Bondi's investigation into judicial misconduct has already led to reviews of dozens of judges nationwide. Some call it a necessary purge, others call it a witch hunt. Now, let's get personal. Why does this story hit so hard? Because it's not just about laws or policies, it's about trust. When a judge breaks the law, it shakes our faith in the system. When an attorney general takes on the judiciary, it makes us question who's really in charge. And when a man like Eduardo Flores Ruiz becomes a pawn in this battle, it reminds us that real people, families, communities, are caught in the crossfire. Imagine being in that courtroom on April 18th. You're a spectator, maybe a local resident who just came to watch a hearing. You see Judge Dugan, a woman you've read about in the papers, suddenly take a stand. You hear the doors lock, you see her lead the defendant out. Part of you might cheer, here's someone fighting back. But another part of you might feel uneasy. What does it mean when the person enforcing the law decides which laws to follow? Or picture this, you're an ICE agent, standing outside that courtroom, doing your job. You've got a warrant, you've followed protocol, and suddenly you're locked out, humiliated, while the defendant slips away. You're not just angry, you're betrayed. This isn't what you signed up for. And then there's Eduardo Flores Ruiz. We don't know much about him beyond the headlines. He's a father, a worker, a man with a past. Maybe he made mistakes, maybe he was just trying to survive. But his life, his family's life, is now a flashpoint in a national debate. He's not just a person anymore, he's a symbol. And that's the tragedy of this story. Real people get lost in the noise. So, what happens next? As of April 27, 2025, Judge Dugan is out on bail, awaiting trial. Her supporters have launched a legal defense fund, raising over $200,000 in just days. Protests have erupted in Milwaukee, with some calling for her release and others demanding her resignation. Flores Ruiz, meanwhile, remains at large, his whereabouts unknown. The FBI says they're closing in, but rumors swirl that he's been smuggled out of the state by activists. Pam Bondi, undeterred, is doubling down. She's pushing for new legislation to increase oversight of judges and stiffen penalties for obstructing federal law enforcement. This is just the beginning, she said in a recent interview. We're going to clean house, from the courthouses to the Capitol. Her critics warn that this could erode judicial independence, giving the executive branch too much power. Her supporters say it's long overdue. This story is far from over, and it's bigger than any one person. It's about the kind of country we want to be. Do we prioritize law and order, even if it means hard choices? Or do we prioritize compassion, even if it means bending the rules? There's no easy answer, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. Before we wrap up, let's take a step back and reflect. This case exposes a wound in our society, a wound that's been festering for years. We don't trust our institutions anymore. Not the courts, not the government, not each other. And when trust breaks down, people take sides. They dig in. They stop listening. That's where we are right now, and it's a dangerous place to be. But here's the thing, we don't have to stay here. Stories like this, as messy and painful as they are, give us a chance to ask the hard questions. What does justice look like? Who gets to define it? And how do we rebuild a system that works for everyone, not just the loudest voices? Pam Bondi's fight, Hannah Dugan's defiance, Eduardo Flores Ruiz's escape, they're all pieces of a puzzle we're still trying to solve. And maybe that's the real story here, not the scandal, not the arrest, but the fact that we're all in this together, whether we like it or not. So, what do you think? Is Judge Dugan a hero or a criminal? Is Pam Bondi a savior or a tyrant? And where do we go from here? Drop your thoughts in the comments, share this video, and let's keep this conversation going. Because if we don't talk about it, if we don't face the truth, then nothing changes. And we deserve better than that.